Hello, my name is Shalina Morrow. Um, Today, God has asked me to put my testimony out. Um, I was watching Courtney Daly, the author, and she had done her testimony, and it really touched me and all the God stories that she's been doing. And she, after her testimony, she said, now it's your turn. And God spoke to me and he said, okay, I want you to do your testimony. I want to flood YouTube with testimonies about me. So, this is just what he has done for me. I am not a perfect person. I have made a lot of mistakes in my life. I am not from a perfect family. I did not have perfect parents. Nobody is perfect in all truth. But the whole thing is what I'm trying to say is that, it may seem like this sounds like, oh, wow, but it's like it's anybody's story, and that's what God wants, is he wants just our stories. And so I'm going to start. I was saved before I was 10. I'm not good at dates, so I'm not going to even tell you when it was, but we were living on the Navajo Indian Reservation, and we had gone to a revival, which is very prominent for the type of mission this was. It was from the Southern Baptist Mission Association, and I do remember listening very carefully to the mission area that was there. We were, as I said, we were on the Navajo Indian Reservation out in these camps, because we lived in camps for the oil field. My dad worked for the oil field. And I remember that I'm listening to this gentleman, and the next day we go back, and I remember when he called people to come from, I was sitting on the front pew, and I ran to the front of this little mission and was like going, that's what I want. That's, that God was calling me right then. And I remember that it was just like this little special moment between me and God. And I also remember being baptized in a little pond. It was actually like a cattle pond that was out there, because we're in New Mexico and there's not a lot of water. But so there would be little ponds and stuff there for cattle and things like that. And it was like a cattle pond. And so all of us who were saved during this mission were baptized in this cattle pond. So that's the beginning of this story, is this little girl getting baptized, as I said. And so then God was with me through my childhood. Okay, we didn't go to church all the time. But I remember GAs, and I remember going to church on the church bus to go to, Sunday school and stuff. I also remember going to vacation Bible school several times. We had gone to a Bible school that my mom and papa had gone to in Utah that was with their church. They went to the Church of Christ. So I have a little bit of knowledge about several different types of churches. And so I remember Bible school, and what's really funny is, for the longest time, the only Bible verse that I can remember that I memorized was John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And that is like the only Bible verse I knew for the longest time. And so, as I'm growing up, God is there, but it's like not a big part of my life. And I remember that we were going to church there for a while, and then my mother had a falling out with the church, which church hurt. It's very common, and I think that's a satanic practice, is the church hurt. So we quit going, and I was like, that's okay. I grew up, just as I said, sort of normal but not normal. Now, nobody's life is normal, okay? I mean, we call it normal, but it's really, everybody's life is like, they got different things in their lives, and they have different choices that they make, and they have different things that happen to them that shape who they are. And I was like, well, okay. So then I decided to go in the military. And I was like, okay, I went into the Air Force. I did not know why I was going into the Air Force, except for I thought I was there to make my dad happy. Um, and it was a very nice experience, but I had wanted to be a special education teacher, so this was sort of a veering off for me, so to speak, going into the military. And I decided I wanted to work on airplanes, so I went into the military, into the Air Force, to work on planes. In basic training, I remember that we would have Sundays and Saturdays off, and they had this church. It had to have been, a Pentecostal type of church. And I remember singing and praising God, and I was just so close to God. And then I tried the Southern Baptist, because I was Southern Baptist. I'm a baptized Southern Baptist. And it was quite a bit different. There's a lot of difference between them. At the time especially, and then you had your hymnals, and it was a lot more quiet, and I really liked the happy, joyfulness of the Pentecostal church. So I was like, okay. And I remember going through basic training, then I went to tech school. As I said, I'm working airplanes, and then I went to California for my first duty station, and it was so interesting. Now, I was a normal 80s girl, promiscuous, didn't really think a lot about it, because that was just the society that we lived in. And I remember sitting with my boyfriend at the time at the table in the mess hall, and this young man come up to me, and he was like going, I think you need to come to church with me. And I was like, at the time, I'm like going, I don't, think so. I'm like going, oh, this is sort of strange. But I was like, okay. So I sort of like was married, in the Bible, it talks about Mary treasures up these things in your heart. Well, that was one of those little treasures that God was doing in my heart. He was like calling me back all this time, little bitty things that he would just sort of, I was like, far from him, but he was still there. Or at least I felt like I was far from him, but he was still there. So then that base closes. I have to move. I tell my boyfriend, I'm like going, are we getting married? Because I was pretty serious about relationships, even though promiscuity, I was still serious about it. And he's like going, he didn't think we were going to get married. And so I was like going, okay, so I'm going to Maine thinking, yeah, I have a boyfriend, but it's more of a backseat boyfriend, and he's just sort of waiting to break up with me. So I go to northern Maine, next duty station, and I started getting more into witchcraft. My family has a little bit of occult practice. I'm going to talk about a lot of New Mexico, where there's a lot of occult, demonic practice there. But so I had a lot of occult practices, and so I had gotten this book, y'all. It was so funny because I'm reading the book, and it's like going, you need to pray to the spirits of the cosmos for things that you want. Okay, that's interesting. And it gives you this like step by step of how to pray to the spirits of the cosmos. And I'm really sitting here going, I want to do this, because I'm like trying to learn a little bit of witchcraft here. And so I was like going, okay, I'm going to pray for a Bible. Now, the story about this is that the boyfriend in California was like, the Bible is not real. It's been corrupted. And so therefore, we don't have the real word of God. We never will have it, because it's been corrupted by man. Now, this is a complete lie. And I'm going to learn this very quickly, because I get on my knees in my barracks room, and I am praying to the spirits of the cosmos. and I say, I want a true Bible. And two people appeared to me, white. Now, you have to understand, I didn't say this, but my family was very, like, into the occult type of stuff. So this was not like one of those things of, oh, I'm so afraid and I fall down in fear. No, it was just sort of like, okay, this is just the spiritual realm. My family, for my mother especially, was very much into the spiritual realm and attached to it. So I did not have a problem with this. And when I saw these two creatures that appeared to me, appeared a man and a woman, but it was angels. I now know. And they asked me, what do I want? And I say, I want a true Bible. And they were laughing at me. And I mean, they are laughing at me still. But they were laughing at me and they said, there's a Bible on your bookshelf. Because I had bought in California a New King James or a King James Version Bible. And I went in there and I picked that Bible up and I was in tears because I was like going, oh, wow. You know, God just like came down and just was like, here, I'm giving you what you asked for. And he let me know that, I mean, in a very spiritual awakening moment, that what I was thinking was not real is very much real. And it is his word. And whatever version that it is, he can come through it. So I was like, okay. And so I had two guys that are friends. And one of the guys had a comic book series when he was younger that was called the Crusader series. And now we're talking a couple of years because we're all like, you know, late teens, early 20s at this time. And he had it sent forward and we started reading this. I mean, we just start pouring over the Crusader series books. And I decided that, okay, we need to go to church. And as I said, I'm a Southern Baptist, so I find the closest First Baptist church in Caribou, Maine. And we start going to it. And I'm still in contact with my boyfriend in New Mexico. You have to understand, y'all, I'm in the military. There is like a 25 men to 1 woman ratio. So your friends are pretty much going to be men anyway. And, you know, I'm in the military. And so I had guys that were friends and I had a boyfriend, and they knew that I had a boyfriend from California. But anyway, I decided to drag these guys to church with me. And so we start going to church, and I asked my boyfriend in California, because he's fixing to come out for Christmas. And I said, will you go to church with me? And he sort of laughed it off, and he's like, oh, no, I'm not going to go to church with you. And I was like, I'm sorry, I have dogs. I was like, okay. So I was like, I knew it was over, even though he's coming to see me for Christmas. I was like sitting here, we're over. But anyway, I'm dragging these guys to church. And later on, my boyfriend comes out. We spend Christmas together and everything. But I'm going to church now. And God is calling me closer and closer. Well, in January, after my boyfriend goes back, and as I said, we're still like, I don't know where we're going anyway, and I'm thinking we're over anyway. But in January, I had to do debrief with my crew. And I had never met this debriefer. And I met a man. And we hit it off. And we were flirting and talking and everything. And it was rather interesting because he didn't ask me out. And I was sort of like disappointed, you know, sort of a little bummed. But, you know, we work at the same place. You know, even though we don't work in the same area, we work at the same place. So I wasn't too worried about it. But so then that next Sunday, we go to church. And I have my 2 guy friends. And there is this man in the choir loft, and I'm not kidding, we start flirting. And so as I said, these are friends. I think they thought we were going to be more, but we were actually just friends. And I'm flirting with this guy. His name's Tim. and everything. And he told me the only reason he didn't ask me out is because he wanted to go out with a Christian woman. And I was like going, well, I'm looking for, marriage material. He's looking for marriage material. And so we get together, and within just over 3 months of being together, we get married. And we find out we're going to have a baby. And it was just like boom, boom, boom. And he was the best person for me. He was a very strong Christian man. He was 28 when we got married. I was 21. And we just were right because we were ready for a relationship that was going to last. Yes, I broke up with my boyfriend before we really got together, but, that was a long, drawn-out process, which is hysterical. But anyway, we're together, we're growing, we're learning about more churches. We go to the Assembly of God, we go to the United Pentecostal Church, we're learning about different denominations and the different ways to worship and stuff like this, and we're just growing. God has really, got a hold of me now, and it was really sad. I told my mom that I was excited about God, and my mom was sort of like, you'll get over it. Yes, and I got that, and that was pretty discouraging, but that's sort of our temptation and our persecution as Christians and I was being persecuted because, now I'm really following God, but as I said, God has never let me go from the time I was a child. Even though I fell away and I was sort of walking in different ways, he's always been calling me back. Now he's really got a hold of me. As I said, we're learning about things, and I get out of the military because military is not really a good place for somebody who's pregnant and struggling. So, I get out of the military, and we go to Michigan, and we move in with my husband's cousin. My husband's cousin is a Assembly of God type of person, non-denominational, and he had all of this material. He had, the Blood Covenant by Kenneth Copeland, and several cassette tapes, and I just was devouring everything that he had. And it was so exciting, and we were growing, and we were going, we went to United Pentecostal, and not a United, Full Gospel, and another Assembly of God, and just learning about these different denominations and these different faiths and the different people. And we're just really growing together. And we have my son, my first son, and but we're living with his cousin. Now, his cousin is in a retirement park. Now, he's older, not that old, but he'd never been married. He didn't have any children. And so he had gotten in this retirement park, and they did not allow children. And now we have a baby. And he's getting 4 months old, and somebody finds out that we have a 4-month-old baby there. And so they tell us we have to leave, and I call my mother in New Mexico and said, we got to move, and I don't know what to do because we don't have any place to go here. And she said, let me check, and my dad called his dad. My grandfather owned a industrial engine for oil field engines, that he fixed them and stuff in New Mexico. So they said, come back. And so we moved back to New Mexico. We move in with my mom and dad. My mom is like going, there's something different. You're on too much medication. You're quieter. I had a quieter, peaceful, more spirit, where I would have been very hyper and very just go, go, go. I was still go, 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 but I was more peaceful. I now know that that's what was going on, and that's the reason that she felt like I had changed, is because I had more peaceful lifestyle at the time. We moved into an apartment, and we start going to Baptist church, Southern Baptist church, because my husband feels like they have a better mission quality. They go out and they have missionaries that go out and bring people to Jesus, and he felt that that was what he wanted to do, and I was all right with this. What's interesting is we went to my great grandmother's church, which my great grandmother died when I was 5 years old, and so whenever we started going to this church, my mama, her daughter, was like, "Oh wow, that was my mom's church type of thing, grandmommy's church." So I was like, okay, so a lot of things were coming together. Well, we get together with some people and we're starting to work in a mission and a soup kitchen and a place that people could come and take showers and they could get a meal and stuff like this. And so we're working in these places and just like doing what God wanted us to do. Well, one time we're there and a woman comes in with her significant other that I think. And since I'm the only woman there, I go and talk to her. And all of a sudden, she starts, I don't even know how to explain it, but it was like she was convulsing. And she was demon possessed. Okay. And I had been learning about the full armor of God, spiritual warfare, this kind of stuff, but I hadn't gotten really deep in it yet. I was just learning about it. But anyway, I was like, I laid my hands on her and called for my husband. And I don't know what happened, but it was just like this crazy thing. And now I know that I was basically, a demon came into me myself. Um, and I was like, okay, wow. But you don't know what's going on because if you don't have the wisdom or you don't have the knowledge at that time, you can't fight it. And I didn't have the knowledge. My husband did not know what happened. So at this time, I quit going to church. I started self-harming. I started, doubting who I was in Christ. I started, it's just like a constant beating myself up and everything. And it was just like overwhelming. Um, this negativeness that hit. And then I started getting suicidal. I had my second son. And when he was 8 months old, the VA had decided that I had bipolar disorder. And not only do I have bipolar disorder, I have what's called a rapid cycle bipolar disorder, which means that I can go up and down really fast. Well, my mother was like, well, your dad's bipolar, so it's not that big of a deal. But my dad was like, it's like a normal person. Everybody has a mild, what I would consider bipolar, that you would have good and bad times. You would have good times and you go down, you have a bad time. But this was not that. This was like seriously up and down all the time. I felt so ingenuous. I would cry and laugh at the drop of a hat. I would be suicidal 1 minute. I would be happy the next minute. It was very disconcerting, very concerning because the emotions were all over. And so this started a medication trying to get this under control. And so I went from, as I said, going to church, doing what God wanted me to do, to now I am just like constantly battling this demonic power of they're telling me to kill myself. I'm not worth anything. I'm horrible. And it was like this battle, and we're in New Mexico where there is a lot of occult practice anyway. So this was, I don't even know how to explain how horrible to be suicidal every day, to not know that you're going to be there, to be thinking about going and killing yourself and hiding away where nobody can find you because you're such a horrible person. That's what I was going through. Constantly being told by this demonic presence that I'm a horrible person, I'm a bad person, everybody would be better off without me. And that's what I was going through. And I struggled with that for years and years. So then we have my third son. I have three boys. And my mother got my husband a job with the government in Texas. And my husband being a veteran and also having the information that they needed, the knowledge that they needed, he was like basically a shoe-in. Funny story there is my husband did not want to move to Texas. He said he would move any place but Texas. And guess where God put us is in Texas. So just be prepared for that. Don't tell God where you're going to go or what you will not do, because you will probably find yourself doing it. Little, PSA there. But anyway, so we moved to Texas, and I'm still battling the suicidal thoughts. I'm still, I have good days, I have bad days, I have some cutting time, with medication changes and just like a constant battle. And my sons are getting older and stuff, and, this is just their life. I find out my oldest son is also bipolar. We have to help him through that and get him on medication and stuff. And it's just like it was a spiraling of just one thing after another. Well, then I got really sick, several years later, and I had to have a hysterectomy due to fibrous tumors. I also had to have my gallbladder removed at the same time. Now, first of all, that is, losing your hormones all at once. This is a good and a bad thing for a bipolar person, but, it was like I was stuck there. And so I get a hysterectomy, but my recovery is very slow. And my children at this time are being homeschooled, so it's not a big as deal. And so we would just sit in bed and we would do their schoolwork and stuff like this. But I was, functioning, but barely, a lot of time in bed, not cooking, not going shopping too much. It was just like a very slow time. And God told me to get out of bed. Listen to God. And so me and my, human broken wisdom was like, oh, no, I don't need to get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed. I'm depressed. No hormones. No, yeah, they put you on supplemental hormones. They're still not as good as your regular hormones. And so I was like, okay. So then one night I'd been sick. I had gotten some codeine cough syrup because I had severe cough. I have asthma. And everything. And I got mad at my husband. And so I took some medicine. And then I went to sleep. And when I woke up again, apparently I'd had a dream about something, my husband being with somebody else that stressed me out and upset me. So I took more of that medicine. Plus, I took the cough syrup, and then I went on this thing, and I just started taking everything in my house that I could find. And for some reason, I was like, I started saying goodbye to my children. And so I go and sit on a chair. I remember this part. I don't remember anything after that. The next thing I know, I wake up in an ambulance. Then I go back out. And then I wake up at the hospital. Then I go back out. Then I wake up at a treatment facility. Because guess what? I just tried to commit suicide. And they're like going, this is, serious, which it was. But anyway, so I went to the treatment facility. I got in with, on the side of the Christian side. They had a Christian side and they had just a secular side. I went to the Christian side, and I was there for a week. And I had been seeing my psychiatrist, and I had a psychologist, and I saw them, and I wanted the treatment facility to get together with my psychologist or my psychiatrist before we changed anything. Because, when you're changing medicines like that, I felt like there needed to be a lot more talk, but they didn't want to talk to them. And so I made it out of the treatment facility, but I went straight to my psychiatrist, and luckily they had an outpatient program there. And I went into the outpatient program within a week, and I was there for 8 weeks in outpatient. And I had gotten a place to stay, and it was just going through all of the stuff, changing medicines and stuff like this. Did it change the suicidal thoughts? Did it change the ideology? Not really. It just made it a little bit better. So medicine does help. It just, it just makes the symptoms a little less, like right there in your face. They're more like in the background type of thing, background noise. But my husband at this time now does not want me emotional at all, because emotions turn into negative things. I get suicidal, I get depressed, I get, and so he's like going, the more unemotional you are, the better off, my life is. Not truth, but that was just how he felt, because let's face it, his wife has been suicidal. Now she has tried to commit suicide. And he did not take this well. As a matter of fact, he did not take this so well that we were worried about him and his mental state. So I understand this, and I understand what was going on with my family. But anyway, so now we're back on a cycle of medications, upping doses, lowering doses, changing meds, stuff like this, trying to keep ahead of these thoughts and ideologies. Seeing my counselor, my therapist, I love her to death, and the psychiatrist and stuff, and just, trying to keep going. Well, then I started having homicidal ideologies now. They didn't get me with suicidal ideologies, so now they're like going, we're going to get you with the homicidal ones. So the first thought that was homicidal was, I have animals. I have cats and dogs, and they are my babies. My children are not my babies. My children are my children, and my animals are the babies because I have to take care of them. So the first thought was, kill your cat. I love this cat. She was, one of my favorite cats. And I had to take her to the vet. And this ideology was coming to me, and it's like, no, I want you to, when you go there, you're going to ask them to put this cat to sleep. And I was like, when I'm driving down there, they're not very far from me, but I was like, if I do that, I'm going to have to kill myself. Which, let's face it, that's what they wanted. And so then it was my dog. Kill your dog. Okay, so I'm being bombarded with this, kill your dogs, kill your cats. That was just the beginning of this. I do not know how long this lasts, because as I said, I'm not at good at times. But I do remember I am struggling emotionally, with this stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to have to kill myself. I can't kill something. I have to kill myself.